It was 3 in the morning when Marina woke up on the cold bathroom floor, her face wet with tears she didn't even remember crying. Beside her, an empty bottle of sleeping pills. At that moment, something inside her whispered that this was not the ending she deserved. But how do you start over when everything seems to have fallen apart? Marina's life had been built like a house of cards. Every achievement, every dream fulfilled was a carefully placed card. She had her dream job at a multinational company, an 8-year relationship, an apartment in the neighborhood she had always wanted to live in. At 32 years old, she seemed to have achieved everything society called success, but it only took an unexpected wind for everything to collapse. First came the layoff. Not because of incompetence, but due to budget cuts that spared not even the best employees. Then, the discovery of the betrayal. The man she imagined by her side forever had been building another life with another person for more than a year. And as if that weren't enough, the apartment she loved so much had to be sold to pay off debts that had piled up in just a few months. In 6 months, Marina went from having everything to not recognizing her own life. What's interesting about darkness is that it doesn't arrive all at once. It settles in little by little, like a fog that slowly swallows the landscape. At first, you can still see the outlines of things, then only shadows, and then nothing but emptiness. Marina was in that place where even the shadows had disappeared. But there is something about hitting rock bottom that most people don't tell you. When you finally get there, when there's nowhere left to fall, you discover something surprising. The ground is solid, and on solid ground, you can start walking again. On that freezing dawn, staring at the bathroom ceiling, Marina remembered something her grandmother used to say while watering the plants at dusk. "See, my daughter? Even the sun needs to disappear in order to rise again. And when it returns, it comes back stronger, more beautiful, bringing a new day full of possibilities." At the time, Marina was only 12 years old and thought they were just pretty words from an elderly woman. But there, at 32, they echoed with a different weight. Could she also be reborn? The journey of rebuilding did not begin with grand gestures or heroic decisions. It began with something much simpler and, at the same time, much more difficult. Forgiveness. Forgiving the company that let her go. Forgiving the ex-boyfriend who betrayed her. Forgiving herself for all the times she ignored the signs, for all the choices that seemed wrong in hindsight. Forgiveness, Marina discovered, was not about forgetting or passively accepting what had happened. It was about letting go of the weight she carried on her back. It was about understanding that holding on to anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Each time she chose forgiveness, she felt a stone being removed from her invisible backpack. She started small, waking up every day, even when the bed seemed like the only safe place in the world. Taking a shower, even when it felt like an insurmountable mountain. Eating something, even without hunger. They were microscopic victories that no one applauded, but that built, brick by brick, a new foundation. Marina moved into her mother's house, swallowing the pride that insisted on telling her she was moving backward. But regression and starting over are not the same thing. Sometimes you need to take 3 steps back to gain momentum and leap farther. And in that familiar space where the walls knew her childhood laughter and her teenage fears, she found the support she needed to stand back up. The first months were like learning to walk again. She sought professional help, started therapy, and faced the demons that had multiplied in the darkness. She discovered that behind the successful executive was a woman who had never learned to say no, who measured her worth by external validation, who was so afraid of failing that she forgot to live. And it was in the process of deconstructing herself that Marina found her true essence, the one that existed before all the titles, before all the social masks, before trying to fit into the molds others had drawn for her.
She enrolled in a ceramics course, something she had always wanted to do but never had time for. There, with her hands covered in clay, she learned a powerful lesson. You can create something new from a shapeless mass. You can shape it. You can make mistakes. You can start over. The clay does not judge your mistakes. It simply offers a new chance. Each piece she created was imperfect, unique, full of the marks of her fingers, exactly as she was becoming, imperfect, authentic, alive. Marina also returned to writing, something she had abandoned since college. She started a journal where she wrote not only the events of the day, but her deepest thoughts, her fears, her fragile hopes. Writing became a form of dialogue with herself, a way to organize the inner chaos, to give meaning to what seemed to have none.
And on one of those pages, she wrote something that changed her perspective forever. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. 6 months after that dawn on the bathroom floor, Marina got a new job. It wasn't in the same field, it didn't pay the same salary, but it was an opportunity. She accepted it with humility and gratitude, without the burden of needing to prove something to anyone. A year later, she organized her first ceramics exhibition at a neighborhood cafe. She sold 3 pieces. 3. To many, it would seem insignificant. To her, it was proof that she was creating something of value, not only in clay, but in her own life. 2 years later, she was in a completely different place, not because she had recovered what she lost, but because she had built something new, something more solid, more true, more hers. She did not become who she was before the fall again. She became someone better, deeper, more compassionate. The process of rebirth is not linear. There are days when Marina still woke up with a tight heart, afraid of the future, missing a life that no longer exists. But she learned that feeling is not failing, that having a bad day does not mean all progress has been lost, that healing is not the absence of pain, but the ability to live with it without letting it destroy you. Marina understood that we are like the seasons of the year. We go through radiant springs, intense summers, melancholic autumns, and harsh winters. And just as nature does not fight against the seasons, does not try to force flowers to bloom in winter, she learned to respect her own cycles, to honor each phase, knowing that all of them are temporary and all of them are necessary. The most beautiful part of this story is not a fairy tale happy ending. It is the discovery that happiness is not the absence of problems, but the presence of purpose. It is waking up every day knowing that you are building something meaningful, even if that something is simply a more authentic version of yourself. Today, Marina looks back at that dawn on the bathroom floor with gratitude, not for the pain, but for the transformation it brought. She had to hit rock bottom to discover that there were strengths within her she never imagined existed. She had to lose everything to discover what truly mattered. And the lesson she carries in her chest is simple, yet revolutionary. You are not defined by your falls, but by how many times you get back up. Not by the perfection of the path, but by the courage to keep walking. Not by what you lost, but by what you can still build. Today, when she looks at the horizon at dusk, Marina smiles, because she deeply understands what her grandmother was trying to teach so many years ago. The sunset is not the end of the light, it is the promise of a new dawn. Darkness is not the opposite of light, it is the necessary interval for it to return even brighter. And she, like the sun, needed to disappear completely in order to be reborn with all her strength.
She needed to let go of who she was to become who she always had the potential to be. She needed to die while alive to discover the true meaning of being alive. Marina's life is not perfect. She still faces challenges, still has bills to pay, still feels lonely at times. But there is a fundamental difference. She is no longer running from herself. She is no longer trying to fit into a life that was not made for her. She is building, day after day, an existence that makes sense for who she truly is.
And in the end, isn't that what we all seek? The courage to be who we are, the permission to start over as many times as necessary, the certainty that we can always rise from our own ashes. Because the truth is that all of us, at some point, will hit rock bottom. We will all go through our own dark dawn. And when that moment comes, remember, even the sun needs to disappear in order to rise again. And if the sun can do it, so can you. And you? Have you ever gone through a moment when you needed to disappear in order to be reborn? What was that process of rebuilding like in your life?